The science versus faith issue dynamic has caused a lot of tension and struggles for a lot of people over time. Many Christians wonder when they're taking classes, perhaps in grade school, college, reading books, watching documentaries, can they really be a Christian and pursue science? And the short answer is, of course, yes, but we need to dive into it a little bit more. This science versus faith dichotomy, it was developed by people who are not Christians, developed by people who have a vested interest in others not being Christians. But it doesn't come from a scientific angle. It comes from purely antagonistic um, direction. And there's a few things I want to say about that. Um, the things that are not as helpful to add into conversation, things that are sometimes helpful to add into the conversation. To begin with, we can't just dismiss the suggestion there's an issue between science and faith by naming one or two famous scientists that are Christians. There's value to that. Their stories, their history matters, but that doesn't really dismiss the problem. The science versus faith idea comes from, and this is how an atheist would explain it. An atheist, or someone who wants to reject Christianity and religion as a whole, will look at religion and say people uh, worship gods because they want to try and explain the world around them. They will say they'll point to gods like the Greek god Zeus, who's the god of thunder in the Zeus in the excuse me Greek mythology, and they'll say people believed in Zeus until we discovered that thunder and lightning was the way that particles interact in storms and interact in clouds with one another. And then all of a sudden, belief in Zeus disappeared. Now, aside from the reality that's historically a questionable thought process at best, as to when the worship of Zeus disappeared, when the discovery of the way lightning works happened. Um, the other issue with that is that's not the sort of God that Christians worship. Christians worship a God who made the particles that move within the thunderstorm. Our belief in God doesn't depend upon the way that lightning works. Lightning and thunder work in clouds. That we call those idols, and there's a reason those have been dismissed for a very very long time, because man makes them in their own image. And so that's kind of where the science versus faith things comes from. That those who want to reject Christianity will say, well, you have to choose between either science or faith. You can't have both. Science answers questions. Faith doesn't have any answers at all. That's kind of how it goes. There's an issue with that. And the primary issue is science deals in the world of mechanisms. Faith deals in the world of an agent or a first mover, as Aristotle would put it. So here's an example. We understand that the purpose of gravity is to, at least on Earth, to keep our feet on the ground. We understand when that gravity's in play when an apple falls on a mathematician's head named Isaac Newton, and he writes the laws of gravity. We understand the value of gravity when we watch videos, or we perhaps even see in person, if you've seen it in person, of rockets going up into space. The purpose of gravity is to keep our feet to the ground. The reason we have gravity is, and the mechanism that it works, is the larger a mass, the more gravitational pull it has towards itself. And we can dive deeper into that, and it gets into something called general relativity that Albert Einstein started working with. Stephen Hawking worked with it more. But we can also say gravity exists because God made it. Um, God was the one who created the mechanism that developed gravity. Here's another example. If I boil some water, and someone asks, why is that water boiling? Well, you can say, well, the particles in the water are moving at such a fast rate is causing the water to heat up and to boil. Well, that's a true answer. What's also a true answer is the water is boiling because I want to make some macaroni and cheese. See, neither are competing answers. They're just different answers to the same question. They're not competing, they just come from a different angle. We have the mechanism versus the agent. And so the science versus faith attitude, that's not it's not necessary because science and faith they answer from two different angles, but they deal with the same in some ways the same phenomenon. And so that's the reality. Christians should never have to feel like they got to choose between science and faith. It's not helpful and it's not healthy. We look to the past and we see the development of the scientific method. We see things like this. These are all developed by Christians. Isaac Newton, the man who discovered and wrote the laws of gravity, he wrote something afterwards called the Principia Mathematica. And it was basically a collection of all his findings. And for all intents and purposes, it was a math textbook. And he wrote in it that he wrote it so that the thinking man should believe and the believing man should think. So hear me out. The science versus faith dichotomy is entirely false. It's unnecessary and it should never hamper the Christian that wants to delve into scientific discovery because it's a beautiful world. We can't do science unless we expect natural order in nature. We can't expect order and natural laws unless we expect and believe in a law giver. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Please let us know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.